All right. Another question is what about equipment? Can it be lost?
Ah, yes. Okay. So this question comes from the idea. I think that the person that was asking it was saying knew that I know that I say that basically, for example, there's no armor in this game. There is armor, but there's no like. Well, one of the things you got to do for your character is pick your armor because and it used to be that way. We've gone through multiple versions of the game, and in the but once I made a shift. At some point, I made a shift, and this is a good time to bring this up. From at one point, like Allies 3.0 was pretty great for a physics sim. You had trajectories on arrows, and I realized, and all this other stuff, and I realized, a god actually pointed out to me. He's like, wouldn't you like it if the game actually reflected spiritual concepts more, and the game actually, the mechanics of the game brought you into that mindset? And I was like, yeah, it's a good idea. I'm gonna have to rewrite the entire game though, and I just got 3.0 where I want it. It feels good now. But it's the right thing to do. Yes, let's do
I'm
it.
telling
So
you, if you really wanted to, I don't know if you still have the information for it, but you could just make 3.0 its own thing. It's outside of Allies. Like,
that's true. I could use it
it
for a
got
system
really
for
in
a whole
depth.
other game. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
true.
If you wanted, I
Yeah,
mean, yeah,
no,
that
I
system
could
is
because
pretty
it's
fun. I
different
liked
enough
it.
too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Back then we were
But
still
yeah,
using the
it's
percentiles,
oh yeah, and that's
the
the thing is that
D100.
most more modern games you're looking at either D20s or 2D6. You don't
Yeah.
really see percentiles unless you're looking at things like Delta Green or Call of Cthulhu,
Yep.
but those are
Yep.
more skill based and they're not really combat oriented because generally in those games, if there is combat, it's either quick, lethal, and you
Yeah.
probably die. you
Yeah.
know, like
Sure.
that's not their focus, and I definitely think like a percentile combat focus system could be really interesting, but that's a whole
Yeah.
different tangent. um
So with that, then, yeah. So getting back to this, then with the equipment, um, one of the ways that we reflect the concept that this is a spiritual game, that the characters are of the spirit realm and not of the material realm, is that your armor, whatever clothing you look just like their face. If you know the four orders, I made a video talking about this at one point. But the appearance of the characters is really what they choose to present. Because when you see, and this is just where I'm drawing this from. This doesn't necessarily mean this is the case, but we have a very natural, like like this table in front of me, the desk in front of me is made of wood, and it's got these cells, or basically atoms and all the stuff that make it what it is. And that the spirit realm is made of something different. Is not a material. That it's not made of material. It's not the material world. So. That when we see prophets getting visions into, or seeing into, or maybe being taken away into the spirit realm, it's always very symbolic. Everything they see means something. What it looks like is purposeful, and so that's what we kind of do here. And so your armor and those kind of things really are what you want to say about yourself. So really, I compare the fighting in concept. These two angels fighting one another is more like Gandalf and Saruman in the tower, wielding this invisible force at one another and these things. That's kind of really what's going on, technically or conceptually, and more so. But it looks like I have this sword and I'm swinging it at you, and you're dodging it, or you're blocking it with your shield or your own weapon or whatever, that kind of stuff. And so, or I have an arrow and I'm firing a bow and an arrow and I'm firing at you. But the weapons that you make generally, again, are just manifestations that you create, localized manifestations. Like I manifest what looks like a bow, and I manifest an arrow and I fire it. And that's the kind of stuff. So you can't lose those items. Those kind of items aren't items at all. Those are just a visual display that you're choosing to represent what you're doing. It's kind of funny. I almost made this comparison once. If you really wanted to go goofy with it, it's almost like Green Lantern, but with some other rules.
Just a whole different thing. There's a scene from this TV show I gotta show you. That's actually a really good example. I just wish it was a bit more well known. But Netflix did a TV show called Sandman,
Okay.
which is like based off of like a comic book series they did. It's technically in like the DC universe,
Okay.
barely. It's like it's largely its own thing. Anyways, there was a really interesting scene. I forget the guy's name, but like the Sandman, like the Lord of Dreams, essentially.
Okay.
Ended up like in that universe, ended up needing to like go to hell for some reason. I think he was trying to he was trying to find someone, get some information, essentially. But it was there was like this really weird sequence where he had to like fight somebody, but like they didn't actually ever throw fists. They were just like spewing concepts back and forth, and like it was really interesting and well done. And then like they tried to make it visually interesting, but it's kind of like that, or I guess another more mainstream but not as accurate example. Like
Okay.
how when like in the 90s X-Men cartoon, when like Professor X like goes to fight someone but it's in like the mindscape, and so
Oh yeah, they did a
so
scene
he's
like
like a
that
gladiator,
in
but like he
Legion. They
can't
did a
actually
scene
fight.
like that in Legion, but yeah.
Yeah, they did that too. um like it's
Yeah.
more along the lines of that than it is,
Yeah, and then
for
what are they
instance,
trying to do
D&D.
in those
And
shows? They're
for
trying to show a spiritual realm, if you will, but they call it something else. It's the astral plane or something like that. Yeah,
yeah,
something like
they're
that.
trying to show combat of a more mental symbolic side of things
Exactly.
as opposed to a physical finesse,
Right.
which is,
So
excuse
what
me,
it
like I said,
happens is
more interesting.
it looks like physical combat. It plays out like physical combat. And if you wanted to tweak that a little bit at your table or describe it a little more fantastical, go for it. But it is conceptually happening exactly like what you're saying, and that this is the visage of a sword, or the visual of those kinds of things. But there are tangible items in the game as well, and you could have a tangible piece of armor or a tangible weapon, whatever, and those are created items, because where you can make localized manifestations, the way I have it in the game is, God created, well, this is the real Bible there, but God created the universe, the heavens and the earth and all that's in them, and these things are existing and persisting at His will. If you read in Colossians, it says that things that everything exists because of Christ as well, and that He maintains it all basically, and that Christ created it, but also He sustains it. And so only God can create these more lasting manifestations, if you will, and so God can create items. And why are there bad guy items? Yes, there are. But what happened, the way we explain it in the game, is that any of these holy items that God had created, when people cross that line, or spirits, I guess, when they cross that line and become rebellious, then they also, when they become corrupt, any items that in their ownership, anything that they own in that regard, corrupts with them. And so those are now unholy items, and they won't use holy items, and the good guys, the holy angels, won't use unholy items. And so now we have items that we can use and lose, like the question asks, but we want to keep them out of enemy hands. Either side wants to keep them out of the other side's hands, and so that's why you have things hidden away and guarded instead of being put to use. I always thought it was funny sometimes. I
Yeah.
mean, I know there's explanations, but I always thought it was conceptually funny when you have a warrior or an orc warrior guarding a chest, and in the chest you find a magical sword, and he's guarding it with a crapo sword, and it's like, he would have done a better job guarding it if he could have used it. But anyway, yeah.
Absolutely. It's no, yeah, that's the whole thing. A good way to think of it is that like base items you cannot lose. You cannot lose base items.
Right.
Anything that gets a bit more fancy, you can lose.
Yep. Exactly.
Now, if there's an option to get like a super special item, and
Oh
like
yeah.
if you lose that, you might want to go get that. Like it. But the thing is that because like both sides, asset denial is a real thing.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
it might be locked away, and now you gotta go
Right.
do like a raid on a stronghold of some sort. Um,
So what he was
and
talking about with
or
that,
against
what
foothold.
Anthony's talking about with the super special item is, without getting too deep into it, it's when you there's certain tiers that you go up as a character, and you can get rewards when you go to those. One of those you can choose is called a covenant item. That is an item that God creates as a covenant specifically with that character, and it's a sign of a covenant. So I give you this and you use it to continue to serve me. That's your side of the covenant. And so
Mm,
there are those, and those can only be used by the character that they're made for. And so
mm,
there, some of those were corrupted with their owners as well. So those are called articles of dominion. At that point, they use them to further their own dominion and not God's goals, but the no longer in covenant. But those can only be, they're kind of like in D&D terms, attuned to that character or something like that.
right.
Like they can only be used by that character. And so when you lose that, you can lose it. But it's going to generally find a way to come back to you, whether that's a plot point. Now we have a side mission where you need to go retrieve it, or somebody else recovers it at some other group and they get it back to you.
Like
Regardless, though, one way or the other, that is a fun plot point. You may have to go several sessions, quite a few sessions without it if you lose it. Yeah.
yeah, think of it like Captain America's shield. Oh no, someone broke his shield. It happens once in a
Right.
blue moon. I mean, it does.
Yeah.
He might go several issues without having a shield, or I guess in Adventures with Mightiest Heroes, like he might go several episodes without having a shield.
Right.
But at some point, someone's gonna figure out how to fix it. We all know it. Like it's only a matter
Right.
of
Right.
time.
At
There's
some
a
point,
stupid
it's coming back.
scroll. It's an energy
Same with
shield.
like
Stupid
Mjolnir and all
scroll.
that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
for sure.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, well, so with all that being the case, like once again, kind of going back how you were saying how like the game can be a bit more goofy or it can be a bit more serious. Like, I know that like one of your character's covenant items, Apex, like is kind of like a wrestling belt, if I'm not mistaken.
No, he
Like
has he
that's
has the
very
gloves, he
specific.
has the gauntlets, and he has that giant ruby necklace.
Oh, okay, my bad. And like, both of those things help him with like more of his grappling style of fighting,
Right.
because that's what he does.
Right.
Yeah, he he's the closest thing to like Hulk Hogan or Randy Savage we have in the game. He really is.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's like not even that's all that goofy. Like it's fun, but it's specifically for that character. And
Right.
so, but then you can go to the other side where it's like absolutely nonsensical. I have a character that's his entire thing is a joke. Like his I'm forgetting part of his name. I can already know it because it's so long now. But it's like Amaziah, Rip Rippity Jenkin, the Yell at Zealot, and then I think there's something else. But like
Yeah.
literally, we talked about it. And his covenant item, because I used the Leroy Jenkins figure like as his character, would literally be a chicken leg. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
literally what his covenant item would be because it's goofy and we're just kind of having fun. And if I'm playing a more serious character, I'm going to play someone like Mishpat or Hark, or Ark, which as those names are so similar. Anyways, that are like a lot more serious. All of them have their own
Yeah.
different flair and whatnot. And then I have my character that's like, if I'm playing with my younger siblings, then like I know they're not going to take it that seriously. They're just
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
Then like I'm gonna pull out Amaziah because
Right.
he's ridiculous.